Started here. Okay, so it's such an exciting time in ZinoGene. Just a few weeks ago, they launched a new product that they called a spring cleaning for your body. I don't know about you, but I know when you have a clean house, how good it feels. You know, you're getting rid of all the old stuff, you've been through closets, you've got things cleaned out, and you just have a good feeling. You know, the other day I had somebody stop by my house, and he was a tree guy, the arborist, and he says, you know, ma'am, I love it when they call you ma'am, you're getting older, right? And he says, you know, if you allowed me to, I'd love to come in and clean up your trees. You have a lot of dead branches around, and it would just both make the place look better, but it would also give more strength to your trees. It's what they need right now. So that same week, ZinoGene launches a new product called ZinoGene, and it's a product that can get rid of all of our old cells or the dead cells. And what is it really doing? Is it making our bodies flourish better? Is it doing something in regards to anti-aging? I don't know what age people start to think of anti-aging, but I personally think it's a hot topic. And if there's anything that people can do to look younger or feel younger, you know, it's more important of how we're doing on the inside, isn't it? Well, today we're going to get all of our questions answered in regards to what ZinoGene is all about. So we will have some time at the end for questions. So if you have a question, we have people watching the chat, so you can put down your questions and we'll get to as many of them as possible. So before we get started here, I am going to introduce the main speaker here, who's going to tell us about ZinoGene. He has been an incredible part of Zino in formulating our health protocol, which we're very proud of in Zino, because it really is like a reset button for your health. Getting yourself into balance, we test it, we get ourselves in balance, we get the right vitamins and minerals in our body, and then we make sure our gut microbiome is working well. And those three things together just kind of get your body reset so it can work optimally in so many ways. I know it's made a difference for me. I feel better after being a part of Zino now for 10 years than I did, you know, I feel 10 years younger instead of 10 years older. But you know, so what will ZinoGene do for us? What is it that this spring cleaning is all about? So he's been formulating things for us in Zino, and he's had such an array of experience in his life. Maybe I should let him explain some of the highlights of the things that he does. But he has been on many boards around the world and has made a life science his main mission in changing the world for the better from the inside out. So let's welcome on here Dr. Paul Clayton. Hi, Dr. Paul. That was a different introduction, wasn't it?
Oh, well, hi, Karla. Thank you. And hello to everybody else. I don't know if I can answer all your questions. I'll do my best to answer some of the ones, that the easier ones and the really difficult ones I might try to deflect. And the reason why I can't answer all your questions is we don't yet know everything that ZinoGene is capable of doing. It's really a leap, not into the unknown, but it's a projection from a long existing and rapidly developing evidence base that's being assembled and added to by many scientific teams all over the world. But no one has yet put these ingredients together in quite the way that we have. So I have some ideas about what this might do, and we're already getting some kind of feedback, which I think is supporting that. But you know, unlike the other items in our portfolio where I knew in advance exactly what they would do, here we're way out over the edge. We're ahead of the rest of the crowd, and we're kind of finding out for ourselves as we go what the benefits of this approach are going to be.
So can you give us a basic on what we've heard so far from just a few weeks ago is that it's like a spring cleaning and a spring cleaning from the inside of your body, that's got to make a difference. We're talking things at the cellular plan. We'll keep it really basic so it makes sense to the rest of us who are not scientists like you, Dr. Paul, but it's very basic spring cleaning your cells. Is that correct?
Ooh, sort of, kind of. I know that there are a lot of people in the audience who are not necessarily scientists, but I know that there are doctors and scientists in the audience too, and I don't want to insult their intelligence. So I have to try and walk a very thin line, a careful line between simplifying but not to the point where it becomes a falsification. So I'm going to try and tell the truth. I'll try and keep it as basic as I can for those who have not gone through the science themselves, and we'll see whether we can, walk this tightrope.
I love that because we want to have both of that. We know that everything you do has the science behind it. So we want to have that also, but I like the fact that we're going to keep both included. So the simplifying and the science behind. So we're good with that, Dr. Paul. So give us ZinoGene. We'd like to hear from you.
But why do we even need ZinoGene when we have the health protocol? Now, the health protocol does a lot of really good things. And it's probably best viewed as a maintenance program. We know that the modern lifestyle makes us sick in incredible numbers. And we know how it makes us sick. And the health protocol is designed to neutralize those negative effects of the modern diet and lifestyle. And a lot of you have already found out for yourselves that it does wonderful things. There are certain things that it won't do. And ZinoGene is not part of the health protocol, and it's not something you need to use every day or you would want to use every day, but it is an occasional deep clean. And just as you said, you have your own maintenance programs, you keep your house clean or you trim the trees, on a regular basis, but every now and then you get to the point where there has been a buildup of wear and tear or decay, and you notice it and you think, well, this is something that I want to deal with. And we use different tools to do that. That's what ZinoGene is for. It's not for everyday use. It's, so if you want to use it for certain things on a regular basis, I regard this as a program that you might want to go in for once, or twice, or 3 times a year. So what does it do? Well, it does something that the health protocol does not do. It is designed to reduce the numbers of senescent cells in the body. So this is not removing dead cells. It's removing senescent cells. It means elderly, aging cells. Now, as we get older, we start to increase the numbers of these senescent cells in the body. And by senescent, what I mean is that these are cells which really have reached the end of their useful lifespan. And under the normal run of circumstances, what they would have done if they were well-behaved and well-mannered and run according to program, when they get to the point where they're no longer capable of being effective, these cells are designed to kill themselves, switch themselves off, disappear, leave the stage. But what happens is, as we get older, increasing numbers of these cells, which should have switched themselves off, fail to do so, and they enter this kind of limbo. Senescent means that they are no longer really functional, but they're still present and they're using scarce resources. So they become a drain on the system. And not only that, they start to release various factors, messenger substances in a spectrum called SASP, which is the senescence-associated secretory phenotype. And these chemical compounds do various things, but one of the things that they do is they create a local inflammatory environment, leading to local tissue damage. It can also be instrumental or helpful to cancers. So we don't want too many senescent cells. Now, for the scientists present, we also know that senescence can be, in certain respects, a protection against cancer. If you can take a cancer cell and make it senescent, it's no longer aggressive. We don't have to worry about it. So, we know it's complicated. Back to everybody else. Forget the scientists now. For most of us, most of the time, you do not want too many of these senescent cells, and they do seem to accumulate with age, and they do slow us down. And it would be a good idea to remove them if we could. How do we know that that's not just a pipe dream? Because the pharmaceutical industry has developed various compounds which are quite good at targeting these senescent cells, removing them. And when you give these compounds to elderly lab rats and mice, what you find is you turn the clock backwards to some extent. So, for example, muscular strength and endurance improves, and instead of being a mouse that is the equivalent of an 80-year-old person, it becomes the equivalent of a 50-year-old or a 40-year-old. Their cognition starts to improve because you're accumulating these senescent cells in the brain, in the central nervous system, where they're also slowing down the works. When you remove these in lab animals, you find that they start becoming cognitively more effective. Their memory increases, they're capable of learning again. And so instead of behaving like an 80-year-old person, they behave more like a middle-aged or even a younger person. So we do know that in various preclinical models, this approach is a very powerful anti-aging strategy. Having said that, we don't yet have a huge amount of clinical data. There is some clinical data. The data that exists is very promising. And I would be very surprised if it was very different when it's all developed and fledged out and published, whether it's very different from the preclinical data. But we jumped the gun. I looked at all the preclinical data. I thought, this really is important and significant. I can see why the pharmaceutical industry is heavily investing in this area. Is it something that we could do that would have the same effect? When you research the literature, you find that there are certain natural compounds that do this exact same task. They are also very good at selectively removing the senescent cells. So I thought, well, let's put that into a formulation that we could offer to our ZinoGene family. And that is pretty much where quite a lot of other people are at the moment. But then I had this other complementary, perhaps slightly eccentric idea, because I thought, well, if we're removing all these cells, could we go one step further? Could we actually replace this population of aging cells with fresh new cells that pick up where the elderly cells left off and started to improve the functioning of the tissue or the organ even more? How on earth could you do that? Well, we do contain stem cells. And stem cells, as many of you already know, they're like the Germanic version would be Urzellen or Zellen. That is, they have the potential to become many other different types of cells. They're like a reserve. And if they can be stimulated in the right way, they can be released from their storage sites, which is typically in the bone marrow of the long bones, for example, of the femur and tibia, and released into the bloodstream. And at that point, they start homing in on sites of tissue damage, going to where they're needed, and they then form into the cells appropriate for that tissue. Now, there's different types of stem cells, and there are some really wonderful, just amazing research that's going on out there, taking basic stem cells and transforming them using what are known as Yamanaka factors. Yamanaka factors, there's 4 of them. And if you add these factors to the stem cells, they become even more super duper. We're not doing that. So, I can't say that we're absolutely at the cutting edge. We're not there yet. But in the supplement market, we're way ahead of the rest, because what we've done is to include in this formulation some other compounds that have been shown to help to release or wake up the stem cells we do have, and they will then migrate to the tissues where they're required. That is the general approach. We're reducing the old. I'm not saying we can get rid of all of them, far from it. And we're replenishing the stocks in our various tissues. What will that do for us? I'm not entirely sure. We're getting a lot of positive feedback. Theoretically, we should start to see all kinds of improvements emerging as more and more people take them and do this repetitive spring cleaning routine. And we'll be watching that carefully, taking notes, and maybe at the end of all of this, we'll be able to tabulate the data and write it up as a research paper.
So, Dr. Paul, in a way it makes sense. In nature, you have flowers around, and sometimes when the flowers have blossomed, you pinch off the ones that are not pretty anymore so that the other ones actually have more strength, and it gives more strength to the flower. Or in nature, as I said, with my trees, you trimmed off the old and it just gives more energy. So I
Something
think,
like that. Something like that, yes.
yeah, okay. So is this, just to understand it, is this like some people are thinking of it as a cleanse? You know, some people do cleanses and they have these, different things that you can take to go through a colon cleanse or different cleanses. Is it kind of like that also?
No, I mean, what most people think of as a traditional cleanse is really nothing more than a laxative. There are other types of cleansing routines that people use, or detox routines as they're sometimes known, and you can do things like you can help to remove heavy metals from the body by using ion exchange resins. It's a slow process, but you can achieve improvements in this way. You can help to reduce the load of certain types of organic toxins, such as organochlorine, biocidal compounds like that, polychlorinated biphenyls, compounds like that, which leach into us through the food chain at the water table. And we can do that by upregulating the activity of a group of enzymes known as phase 2 enzymes. And there are different ways of doing that. We know all these. We have tools to deal with these. That would be like more of a traditional cleanse. This is different. This is different. I'm not saying it's better or more profound. It's just a different thing again. Here, we're trying to remove these, as I said, senescent cells. They're a bit of a drag on the organism, and repopulate your tissues with young functional cells again. How successful are we at doing this? Well, the theory and the preclinical work says it can be done. And what we are finding out day by day from the reports of the people who are using this formulation is that maybe the human experience is not so different from the reports that we have already seen from lab animals.
Okay. So is it, is when you're doing, taking ZinoGene, I understand that you take 4, to do a cleanse, or to do your spring cleaning, you take 4 a day for 2 weeks. It's not a weight-based thing. It's something everybody would use the same amount of to have that, correct?
Yes, because most people have roughly the same amount of plasma, give or take. And what we're trying to do is to achieve a certain plasma level, of the actives, which will give us a certain level in the extracellular fluid, which bathes the tissues. And that is at a level where we know the polyphenols in this formulation have been shown to exert a senolytic activity, that is, to selectively remove the senescent cells. So you take the 4 tablets all at once to get these peak levels in the plasma, the peak levels in the tissue, the polyphenols do their thing. And then, because the body regards these as foreign compounds, it breaks them down and removes them, and basically it's gone. It's like a hit and run.
Okay, so it's working through the blood.
Well, yes.
Okay.
You have to get these compounds into the blood, which bathes all the tissues, to reach the senescent cells that are in those tissues.
Okay. So you mentioned about the polyphenols. So some of the questions have been in regards to how is it affecting, is there any effect, or is it working together with our health protocol or the xenobiotic? Is any of it affecting anything else?
Well, we do have some polyphenols in balance oil. They're there for a slightly different purpose. And we do have some in external as well. There's not really anything of significance in xenobiotic. There are traces, but not significant. Here we're using a much higher, larger dose because we're using the polyphenols to develop a different function. So this is different from the health protocol. It is over and above it. And whereas the health protocol is a daily maintenance routine, as I said before, this kind of deep cleaning is not something that you would need to do or even want to do every day.
So, there's talk about that after you do a cleanse, you could take 1 tablet a day. Is there any reason to be taking a tablet a day? Is that just for maintenance, or if people have any issues? Is there a reason they should be taking it after the cleanse?
Yes, but a slightly different rationale. You see, these same actives, the polyphenols and the fucoidones, which were the compounds we used to dislodge the stem cells from the bone marrow, They have an array of different properties. They are pluripotent. Simply means they've got lots of different properties. So I'm sorry if I slip into the jargon every now and then. That's one for the scientists. So the fucoidands and the polyphenols are really fascinating compounds. They have, for example, antimicrobial effects, antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal. They have anti-cancer effects. They have lots of really positive applications in pharmaconutrition, in what used to be known as natural health. But one of the things that makes them interesting for routine use at a lower dose is that the fucoidands and the polyphenols together have an interesting combination of actions in the mouth, which are helpful in terms of oral health. Now, as you probably know, we get dental decay, of course, not as much as we used to, because we use fluoridated toothpaste. We chew chewing gum with xylitol in it, which is really more of a Scandinavian thing. And we are at the point now, have been for a while, where the most important cause of loss of teeth is not dental decay, it's periodontal disease, inflammation, infection of the gums, which leads eventually to destruction of the dental ligaments that anchor the teeth into the gums, and the gums, the bone, the maxilla, and the mandible themselves decay, and the tooth falls out. The fucoidands are really interesting here because they have the ability to form a non-stick covering on the tooth, which prevents bacteria from growing on the tooth and forming plaque, which over a period of weeks becomes tartar. And what I've found is, and you can tell this for yourself, if you get plaque disclosing tablets from your dentist, no matter how well you brush, you will have some plaque on your teeth. But if you start eating the fucoidands, that plaque will become significantly less, because these are non-stick compounds. They stop the bacteria from sticking to your teeth. The plaque gets less. After a couple of weeks, tartar actually drops off your teeth, which is very, very odd. A dentist I've spoken to are very excited about this because they've never seen it before. And then the infection and the inflammation in the gums starts to get less. You'll start to protect your teeth, and you start to protect yourself against a lot of other much more serious healthcare problems as well, which are now strongly associated with gingivitis or periodontal disease as it gets more serious. The polyphenols have a role to play here too, because they have really interesting antimicrobial properties. So the combination of the fucoidands and the polyphenols, if you're taking them at lower doses, are still very protective in the mouth. This is a different application. It's a different use. And I think what we're going to do eventually is to produce a formulation that is just for oral health and nothing else, and which will be considerably less expensive. There are better ways of doing this. So this maintenance use of ZinoGene, for me, is a stopgap. I want to make oral health much more affordable for more people, and I'm working on a lower cost formulation, which will, I think, be even more effective in looking after the teeth and the gums. And maybe we can look out for that towards maybe in the first or second quarter of next year.
Okay, wow. So those who are on here had really big ears listening for new information. That's fun. Okay, so we're talking, I have questions here that are coming in regards to, can you take the products all at the same time, like at the same time as you take the health protocol?
Yes.
Is there a time that you should be taking it different, or?
No. I mean, none of these formulations interfere with each other. You can take the whole from all at once. I tend to do that because I'm always very time poor, rushing in lots of different directions, although not as much as I used to when I was traveling all the time. And I'll typically breakfast on black coffee and whatever else is convenient. And then that's when I'll take the health protocol, and that's now when I take ZinoGene.
Okay, so is there anybody that shouldn't be taking ZinoGene?
Absolutely, yes. And I think this is important. I wanted to get this out. Senescent cells are really only becoming a problem in the second half, maybe the last 40% or third of your life. So you have no reason to take ZinoGene, the deep cleansing idea, if you're under the age of 50. It's simply, you don't need it. I do not think that women who are pregnant or childbearing, I don't think they should take it, and I'm not seeing any particular problem here. I'm just being very conservative. I think the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. I don't think there's any harm, but I don't want to find out the hard way, if there is.
Yeah, that makes
And
sense.
finally, and last but not least, anyone who's taking blood thinners, because both the fucoidans and the polyphenols in high doses will reduce or slow down blood clotting. So if you're already taking a blood thinner, either the traditional kind or the newer ones, then I would say be cautious. Can I refine that? If you're taking a warfarin or a coumarin, one of those old-fashioned ones, and you're having your blood tested every week, you can take ZinoGene, it's fine, because the testing they do once a week will pick up an extension in the clotting time, and they'll increase or decrease their dose of anti-clotting agent accordingly. They will tend to decrease it.
Okay, I like that. Mm-hmm. Okay,
But if
well,
you're
and I
taking-
think most people that have heart issues or different things going on, they would always work with their doctor on anything. I think that's
Always advisable to ask your doctor. And of course, if you have a doctor who understands a little bit about pharmaconutrition, then first of all, you're very lucky because most of them don't. But if you do, they'll probably be very interested in what you're getting up to. The ones who don't know anything about it, which is still unfortunately the majority, because they're not told this sort of thing at medical school, will tend to be either hostile or they'll say, oh no, don't do that, simply because they say, not unreasonably, well, I don't understand this, it could be a problem, so let's just not go there. But mostly they're speaking from a position of really quite profound and unnecessary ignorance.
Well, it makes sense. I mean, if you're saying this is a lot of the science behind it, not all doctors are always up to par on what it is. And I'm sure they get
Not at all.
a lot of people, so about a lot of things. But one of the things that I love about ZenZino is that all of the products are backed by science. And you said one time, Dr. Paul, I've used this sentence many times, the science is the science. You can't go against it. So if people want to really dig into any of the ZenZino products, the science is backing it up, and you make sure that we appreciate that, Dr. Paul.
Well, you say the science is the science, and I know, and I said that once. The problem is we live in such a politicized period, and the science is so badly misused by many people for political purposes, nowhere more so than in the context of this ridiculous COVID pandemic, where we're seeing more people dying from the results of lockdowns than particularly amongst the younger age groups, than are actually being killed by the virus. Having said that, our science is transparent. Everything that we do is documented. Everything I write is referenced. It enables you to use these references as jumping off points into the clinical literature and see for yourself where we are going and why we are going there.
Right, and where the information we've used to create this, or that you've used to create this, is behind it. I love that. Okay, there's a couple of questions here on the chat too in regards to are there side effects? Are there, something that it's doing for that? Is there any side effects to this?
I'm not aware of any. I haven't seen any consistent reports of side effects. Every now and then someone will say, oh, well, it gave me a headache. People get headaches anyway. I don't see any increasing frequency of headaches in the people who are taking it. One person said it made their blood pressure go up, but that's a little hard to see a cause and effect there because the polyphenols are well known to induce vasorelaxation, in other words, to lower blood pressure. Having said that, people are very diverse, very heterogeneous. They're doing different things, eating different foods. They have different health problems. So it's possible that in some cases you'll see unusual types of adverse effects. But in general, the pharmaconutritional approach is very, very safe because we're using extracts of foods that humans have eaten for tens of thousands of years, and our bodies recognize these compounds and know exactly how to deal with them. Unlike the pharmaceutical alternative, where you're talking about entirely new molecules that the humans, or indeed no animals, have ever experienced before, and where the risk of side effects, toxicity, is so much higher. Now, for those of you who live in the United States, or at least in North America, whenever you watch any of the mass media or television, there are commercials every 15 or 20 minutes, and they are absolutely dominated by pharmaceutical commercials. Pharmaceutical companies now effectively own the mainstream media because they contribute so much of their advertising budget, which means the mainstream media will not ever say anything very negative about drugs or indeed about the pharmaceutical industry. That's another problem in this era of COVID. So we have this difficult situation where everyone is being sold the idea of pharmaceutical remedies for everything. But if you watch these commercials, at the end of each one, there is always this speeded up section where they list the side effects. And it's headache, bloody stomach, diarrhea, hair loss, occasional death, nothing to worry about. All pharmaceuticals come with side effects. It is the nature of the beast. With food derivatives, the risk, the incidence, and the severity of side effects, very, very low. I'm not saying it's zero. You can poison yourself with natural compounds if you know how to do it. But for most people, this is a very, very safe and actually far more profound way to go.
Okay, I like how you giggle at things, Dr. Paul, and what you can do. Okay, so since I am paying attention here, we do have some more questions, and we're other people who are watching for people's questions on here. So I'm going to ask Arlo to let me know. I know you said you're writing me that you do have some questions. So can you tell us some of the questions of the people in the chat?
Absolutely. So we had a question early on from Glenn. We talked about plaque being removed from the teeth. He's wondering if the same plaque that's in the blood vessels, if that'll affect like the heart or the brain at all.
If that is different, totally different kind of plaque. Totally different kind of plaque. That's now we're talking about atheroma, which is a kind of a mush consisting of lipid peroxides, cholesterol peroxides, end oxidation products, cellular debris, very complicated. Biofilm on the teeth is a mixture of peptidoglycans and various other related molecules created and synthesized by the bacteria. We can stop that with the fucoidans. This does not have the same impact on plaque in your arteries.
Okay.
For that, we have balance oil.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
We've had a couple more that were cancer patients going through chemotherapy. They're just wondering if it's beneficial for those people, especially going through chemotherapy.
I would say that for people on chemotherapy, I would recommend Protect and Xenobiotic throughout, because they will reduce some of the adverse effects of chemotherapy. Balance oil, typically doctors or oncologists will tell you to stop taking the balance oil while you're on chemotherapy. I'm not aware of any good reason for that. I think that's just innate conservatism, because we now know that some of the fatty acids in fish oil are actually very good at killing cancer cells. The ZinoGene, I wouldn't use this as a treatment for cancer. I'm not sure I would necessarily recommend that people taking chemotherapy to take it. I think that while you're under the care of an oncologist and they're treating you with these extremely potent and extremely toxic compounds that they routinely use, we don't want to interfere with that any more than is strictly necessary. And I wouldn't routinely go further than advocating the use of Protect and Xenobiotic for that reason. For individual cases, and I work with many doctors who are treating cancer patients, they don't seem to have a problem once they've looked at the data behind ZinoGene or Extend in using those as well. I'm not aware of any harmful results that have come from that. And in fact, some of the patients who've gone through that say that the reports coming back say that they come out remarkably well. They don't suffer from the chemotherapy as much as your routine patients do. So I guess to give you that for what it's worth, it's simply anecdotal and I cannot back that up, but I've heard it from a few people now.
Okay, well, we know in Zeno, I mean, can't make a claim that we can cure or treat anything.
We're not saying anything like that.
Right. But people that do have health issues, a lot of health issues are started by the senescent cells then. So getting rid of that is going to make a difference, possibly, or it's definitely not going to hurt. Is that how I understand you, Dr. Paul?
I think getting rid of senescent cells will be a positive step. But I think that I want to take a step back here and talk about the nutrition transition, if I may, because this enormous burden of chronic ill health, degenerative, non-communicable disease that we see all around us, it seems to be such a huge part of aging that we have come to accept it as natural, but actually it isn't. And this was first established by Barry Popkin, who's someone I talk about a lot, who talks about the nutrition transition, which is what happens in every country that leaves its traditional diet behind and switches to a modern and increasingly ultra-processed diet. And then what we see is that these diseases become much more common. They start appearing in progressively younger groups of subjects. And what that shows us is that the modern diet is actually poisoning us. It's making us very, very sick, and it's surfacing as non-alcohol related fatty liver disease, connective tissue disorders, cancers, neurodegenerative conditions, all those things. Largely they're caused by the modern diet and lifestyle. Now, some people have strong genetic risk factors, about 1 in 10. And now I want to talk about the work of Michael Gervin, because he has been looking at vestigial groups, hunter-gatherer, horticulturalist societies. There are a few left, mostly in Africa and South America. And there, what he finds is they have about the same life expectancy that we do, but very, very little of the chronic degenerative diseases that we do. So as they get older, they don't tend to become fatter, they don't become more insulin resistant, their blood pressure doesn't go up. This is something interesting for men. Their prostates don't grow any larger. Interesting for everyone. Their brains don't shrink. They don't age in the way that we do because they're eating a pre-transitional diet. And that was enough information for us to be able to develop the health protocol. We worked out what it was about the modern diet that was making so many people sick, killing so many people prematurely. And each of the elements in the health protocol is designed to counter one of those major factors encountered in the modern diet and lifestyle that is causing so much harm. We have the antidotes. And the ZinoGene is a little bit off to one side. It probably confers some additional help as well. And it's really more of an anti-aging approach.
Okay, so let's start on anti-aging topic. I mean, there's a lot of people asking a couple of questions here. Maybe before we start on anti-aging, just want to answer. Ranjana has also asked, but there's a whole bunch of people are asking what to expect. And then we'll go into anti-aging. But what should people, like when we're talking to others, a spring cleaning sounds good because, those who like clean houses want to spring clean. But in regards to what to expect when you do a spring cleaning, because you might not be able to see something on the outside after that, but what are we expecting to have done after that? Should you expect to feel something different? Some people might feel something different. Is there anything that we could be looking for or expecting?
It really depends on what types of senescent cells are being removed. And what we have found, or what other scientists have found, is that different senolytics, different polyphenols and different drugs used to remove these senescent cells each of them have a slightly different profile of action. So some of them are better at removing senescent cells in blood vessels. Some of them, which I don't think is particularly interesting or important, some are more able to remove senescent cells in bone and cartilage, which is why the focus increasingly in this area is on using combinations of senolytics. I don't like the idea of using combinations of senolytic drugs because when you start moving into polypharmacy, the risks of adverse effects multiply. And that's not an area that I feel very comfortable in. But I think it's okay to use multiple or combinatorial approaches if you're working with these very safe natural ingredients. So the different polyphenols we use all have slightly different profiles. They all seem to target slightly different tissues. And I think that one of the areas where more people are going to see improvements would be in and around the bones and joints. So if your joints are getting a little creakier as you get older, I think that might be one of the areas where we're going to see the more significant responses.
Okay, I like that. Okay, so now let's talk about anti-aging. I know you and I have talked about this many times because I seriously feel so much better taking the products. Of course, the diet and the exercise make a difference, but really giving your body the best. So how is it affecting or what are you expecting in regards to anti-aging?
Well, I don't think ZinoGene is the be-all and end-all. I think it's the first step in the supplement market in this direction, but I think we can go further. If the preclinical data can be extrapolated into the human arena, if humans respond in the same way as lab rats and lab mice, then I think that we're going to see considerable rejuvenation. As I said, the lab and animal experiments indicate that physical performance and mental performance, you can turn the clock back by the equivalent of maybe a quarter of a lifespan, maybe even more. So what we may be talking about, if this translates, as I said, into the human experience, is extending healthy middle age by another decade or so. I mean, maybe even more, who knows? It would be foolish for me to try to promise anything, or certainly any more than that, because the data do not yet exist. We are at the forefront, and we're starting to generate these data. Once we have enough to tabulate and work meaningfully with, we will publish it. Or I should say, grammatically, we will publish with them the data, plural. Sorry, I'm a grammar Nazi as well as all my other faults.
I love that. Okay, so, but it also makes sense, like, feeling better. Like we mentioned in regards to a plant, you take off the bad, and it really is thriving better when you're taking away dead branches, or you're taking away the wilted flowers. So getting rid of senescent cells, is it going to make you feel different?
I think that it probably will, because those rats and mice that suddenly found that they could run for 2 hours in a treadmill as opposed to 10 minutes, or they could find their way to the cheese in the maze in 5 seconds as opposed to half an hour. If you translate that into the human experience, you're going to be more active, you're going to be more energized, you're going to be able to think more clearly, more rapidly, you'll be able to memorize more reliably. But as I said, that's an extrapolation from the animal data, and nobody has proven that this happens in humans yet. So I'm speculating here. This is what I think may happen, but I cannot prove it.
So, but it's fun to have, the background that you have, and looking at our bodies to get this spring cleaning, what it really is doing for us. And I can see a lot of questions have to do with certain ailments. Some people are asking about, now that we did mention the cancer word, but there's a lot of questions in regards if people have some type of lifestyle disease, if this is going to make a difference. But as you're saying, it looks like getting rid of the senescent cells is going to affect your healthy cells too. Is it going to help the healthy cells get stronger?
No. They won't do that. The chronic degenerative diseases, I regard, in most cases, about 9 cases out of 10, where there is no strong genetic risk factor, these are epiphenomena that are or syndromes that are driven by this dreadfully unhealthy modern diet and lifestyle that we have created for ourselves, that is so far away from the diet and lifestyle that we evolved within and are fundamentally adapted to. We are so far out of our comfort zone, and we are dying in very, very large numbers as a result of this. What I have found in a couple of cases that I've been personally involved in is that if you can reach people early enough, then these conditions, many of which are considered to be entropic, inevitably progressive, that they are none of those things, that they go into reverse. If you go to my blog, which is drpaulclayton.eu, there's a post which is coming out in a couple of weeks, which describes a really interesting case that I've been working with, where the consultant neurologist who initially diagnosed Parkinsonism is now being so thrown he is so much at a loss to see his patient improving over a period of 4 years, and now after 4 years, he has had to say, well, I must have got my diagnosis wrong, because you don't have Parkinsonism. And I'm so sorry I said this to you because I know you've been living under the shadow of it for 4 years. And he would rather say I was wrong than even consider the possibility that he may well have been right. He probably was. He's an extremely well-known consultant. But for the first time in his experience, he came across a patient who then changed his lifestyle utterly and profoundly, completely changed their nutritional and metabolic profile. And as a result, I believe, and this patient certainly believes, the pathology that was driving his condition that went away. His natural repair mechanisms started coming to the fore, and the clinical picture was transformed. I've heard a number of other cases like this being relayed to me by others in Zeno personnel from different corners of the globe. And this is one of the reasons when doctors see this, the more enlightened ones, instead of rejecting it out of hand, start to get interested. The ones who are really concerned with the welfare of their patients. And then they start to get involved with us, so they join our family. And I'm always so happy to welcome them. It's very, very important for me personally, and I think for Zeno as a company, to build bridges with and liaise with the medical profession. These are not our enemies. Many of them are our allies. They should be, I think, structurally our allies. We should be working with them and not against them.
I like that, and I do see that too. I saw the changes, in my own family, and it really is making a difference. And after so many stories out there of what the health protocol has done, you just can't deny how it really is making its effect on so many people. And I do think the more people we get the word out to, the more stories we're going to have, and that's how we're going to really make a difference in the world. Somebody was asking just here in regards to, you said, we want to start early enough, but yet ZinoGene, when we're eating so terribly and we have all this going on, but you say not to get started until later, about, I think you said the 50-year mark. But when you want to get started, isn't it something that maybe it is good? I had somebody write that they were like 30. Shouldn't I be getting started? Or they were Americans, Dr. Paul. So should they possibly do this? Or is it something that could be harmful? Should we be giving this to more people?
I don't know. There's something about the American psyche. I think it's so saturated in Hollywood. They've been taught that there's no problem so complex that it cannot be solved with a well-aimed bullet or a right uppercut to the jaw. ZinoGene isn't the answer to everyone's problems. Before the age of 50, you simply don't have that many senescent cells. ZinoGene is designed to remove senescent cells. It is really for the older population.
Okay, well, I'm glad we're making that clear.
Unless you're using it in the lower dose, the maintenance dose for oral health. That's a different thing.
There's a difference there. Okay, that makes sense. I think we're going to round out the questions here. One of the last questions here from Rita was, does it make a difference or making actually more powerful, or does it have more help when you're fasting, or is it the same?
Well, fasting can be a very positive experience, because one of the things that it does, it switches on an energy sensing controlling system called AMPK, and that has a lot of positive effects on the metabolism. It does, amongst other things, it leads to a series of changes which will improve insulin sensitivity, and that's generally a good thing for so many of us who eat a diet with an excessive glycemic load and are insufficiently active. I think that intermittent fasting is really a good idea. You get many of the same benefits from time-restricted eating. So you can fast for 4, 5, 6, 7 days longer if you're feeling particularly mystically inclined. But many of the benefits of fasting do seem to be triggered by time-restricted eating, where you have a gap of at least 14 hours between your last meal of the day and the first meal of the following day. The benefits may be enhanced a little if you increase that to 16 hours, possibly to 18 hours, and that's something you can build into your daily routine. We know that that is associated with weight loss, which is a huge advantage to many people, improvements in insulin sensitivity, and indeed, in many cases, a reversal of diabetes, a cure for diabetes, especially if you combine it with additional physical exercise and reducing your intake of sugars and starches. It's also a very good idea to do this if you have been diagnosed with non-alcohol related fatty liver disease, which now affects a stunning quarter of the world's population. This is another sort of little insight into how unhealthy we have become. Again, that's another subject I'm really interested in. If you go to my blog over the next few weeks, you'll see a post on that as well. There's a long pipeline. There are so many topics that I find interesting that there's a long pipeline, and there are some things that I really would like to release now, but I can't because there's actually an order in which these posts come out. Each one leads inexorably to the next. But in the next 3 to 4 weeks, these things are going to come through, and then you can have a look at them for yourselves.
Okay. So, Dr. Paul, I think this has been a real roundabout answering questions on everything ZinoGene. Is there any last words you would say for people in regards to ZinoGene? Anything that you are excited about or want people to know? Oh, hang on. There you go.
Karla, I've always got other things to say. As far as ZinoGene is concerned, I think that we've pretty much covered it.
Okay. So for those of you who are looking at that spring cleaning, I hope you understand how fantastic this is. The new product out there called ZinoGene from Zino here just launched a few weeks ago. So some of you are just getting through your 14-day spring cleaning. We'll be looking forward to hearing, if we have more stories, maybe in some time, we'll be looking forward to having you on again, Dr. Paul, and hear some of the stories that ZinoGene has been doing. So I am going to allow everybody to unmute.